back. Good morning or afternoon. I am in Ginza. So after waking up various times on the flight and then trying to get get some good rest, which we weren't really able to, we ended up just going to the airport, going through customs and immigration and all that, which, mind you, it's the first time in my life where we got dinged. Mom brought some fruit, which I told her to throw away, but she didn't, and then she forgot to throw it away. And then one of the dogs found it, the sniffing dogs, and yeah, we got a warning on it. And then we found a place to go sleep in the far side of the Haneda Airport, and then we slept for a few hours before making our way into downtown. Tried to go to the Starbucks Roastery first, but that ended up not happening because Mom was super hungry. So I wanted to show them Ginza Bairin, which is where we came. And we had some tonkatsu and not a yakudon, katsudon. That's the name. Wow, that slipped me. But katsudon, and yeah, now we're on our way back to the Starbucks Roastery, and then we'll see what we do after that. We don't have too much time, but we still have like a good 4 hours that we could burn. Anyhow, we'll check back in a moment here. And welcome back. This is kind of an interesting time. It's been a couple days since I actually have arrived back home from Japan. I realized that after going to Ginza, I didn't film any A-roll. Like, I did a lot of B-roll, but no A-roll. There really wasn't any reason for it other than, like, I was really just looking after Mom. She wasn't really feeling all too well. That was kind of from the get-go of the day, so it is what it is. After Ginza, we then went to the Tokyo Starbucks Roastery in Nakameguro. And this was like a goal of mine since before Thailand was even planned. It is one of a very few amounts, I want to say like 7 Starbucks roasteries around the world. And it was kind of a cool thing to be able to go to where they actually roast the beans for the majority of the area. I believe they're supposed to provide the beans for the majority of Asia, actually. For Starbucks in Asia, I should mention, not all the coffee shops. And so we went, and it is just as impressive as all the other videos and photos that you see of it. As you enter into the area, it stands out. It really is like this beautiful building that is this weird architecture, and it has the Starbucks Roastery and the Starbucks Reserve R on the side of it and then in front. And we went right in, and there was, if I recall correctly, there's 5 levels. There's 4 above ground and 1 below. I didn't actually go to the below one. I don't know if Lynn or Mom did. I don't think they did. But we did go to all 4 levels. So the first floor, or ground floor, all the way to the 4th floor. And each floor had like a specific theme to it. Like the first floor was all about coffee. The second floor was all about tea. The third floor, I believe, was the bar. I don't recall what the 4th floor was. The thing that made it impressive was the fact that they had all the different types of that third wave coffee technique. So they had siphon coffee makers, they had pour overs, they had your regular espresso machines. You know, there was this cool bakery in the back of the first floor where they baked all their goods fresh. And like I said, this was a goal of mine. This is one of those things that I guess you could say was ticked off my bucket list, if you want to put it that way. And I really, really wanted to go there, and Mom and Lynn had no idea why until we got there. And then they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This place is just so different than any other Starbucks that we've ever been to. And we've gone to quite a few Starbucks reserves, one in Singapore, one in Thailand, one in, I believe it was Frankfurt, Germany, and none of them compare. This place is like hands down so much better, and you could understand why. And there's only, like I said, like 7 of them around the world. It was impressive. Everything they had there showed the craftsmanship that you would expect of a small, popular third wave cafe. They had all the baristas were very well trained. The bakers in the back were very well trained. The bartenders were very well trained, so you could get alcohol mixed drink with coffee in it. There, we ended up just going with something simple, drinks that were only available at the Starbucks Roastery, which was a barrel aged or whiskey barrel aged coffee and a, what was it, creme brulee latte that they actually like burned the top of, and the tiramisu, which was like selling out like hotcakes. That was their hot thing. That's what we saw, just boxes and boxes, not boxes, trays and trays coming out to the floor. I wanted to try all the bread. They look so good. Like the bread looks delicious, and they're all made in like this special oven in the back of the first floor, like I said. Another thing that's on the first floor is this cool bean roasting machine that actually has all these tubes and things coming out of it, so it could send the beans immediately after they were roasted to wherever they needed to be. They weren't actually roasting anything at the time that we were there, unfortunately, so we didn't get to see the machine on, but it was still cool to see. And the back wall next to the machine, or the oven, I guess you could call it, the roaster, had one of those cool old flipboard schedule type deal where it actually told the story of this roastery and what their goals were and their mission statement. It was really cool to just watch it flapping around. And then going up to the second floor, Lynn was really enthralled with the Tivana floor that they had, and she actually got this special tea. I don't recall what it was, some sort of like chrysanthemum tea or something like that. It was a very flower, like sour drink actually, or tea. And then we actually sat on the third floor because that was the place was cracking. There was like so many people there, so the only place we were able to find seating was on the third floor, and we kind of just got lucky because we kind of got one of the worst seats in the place, being that it was right next to a busy door, so people would be walking in and out and you just get a blast of cold air, even though the inside was really hot, so you'd have your jacket off and all of a sudden whoosh, all this cold air would hit you. What was funny was that there were still people sitting outside. Every floor above the first floor had an outdoor patio area for you to go sit at, and it was just so serene. Like, the Nakameguro area is definitely a nicer area, and it's very, very quiet in that area as well. And the buildings and everything that make up the scenery surrounding the area, it's really, really beautiful. So it was actually quite nice to see. Mom was quite enthralled. Lynn was blown away. We spent quite a bit of time there, I would say, probably about an hour. And it was mainly, in my opinion, was just to let Mom rest a little bit more because she needed that respite after all that traveling. And then Mom was getting antsy and she wanted to leave, so we didn't really have time to do anything else. I did want to do the Todoroki Valley or Todoroki Ravine. That was the first thing I wanted to do, but because everything got moved around and things got changed, it ended up we didn't actually do that, and what we ended up doing was going to get lunch as the first thing in Ginza. And so the only other real thing that I was like we could do is on the way back to the airport, because Mom wanted to get back somewhat early, was we could go to Shibuya and go walk around Shibuya for a little bit. And there was the thought that we should get dinner in Shibuya, but it didn't, I should have thought heavier on it. It didn't really cross my mind. I was like, we could just eat when we get back to the airport. And there's a story behind that, which I'll get to in just a second. But we went to Shibuya, walked around, loved the scramble, looked at all the new buildings and everything, and then did exactly what any tourist would do. We crossed the street and went to the Starbucks there, even though we were just at Starbucks technically. But I had a different reason. I wanted to go into the Tsutaya that was there and go look for a couple books that I wanted to buy, which unfortunately they did not have. After spending about a half an hour or so at this area, we all met back up and then made our way back to the train side to where Ling and Mom could go see the Hachiko statue as well as the Hachiko wall, and then made our way back into the station to go back to Haneda to get ready for our flight back. You know, it's kind of one of those crazy things because right now at this time was rush hour, and although it was a Monday, I believe, yeah, it was a Monday, that was pretty crazy to see that we were all able to get on the train and all able to get seats during rush hour in Shibuya. And we just went back to the airport, and maybe that was the reason, because we're on a train that was headed towards the airport, and I believe Osaki was the last stop before it heads off to Haneda. Not that many people got off the train, but there weren't that many people on the train to begin with. And then we went to Haneda, where I then returned the internet that I rented for the day. It was $10, super easy. Like, you sign into an app, you go up to a machine, you scan a QR code, and the internet MiFi box thing pops out of the vending machine, and that's it. You just program your phone to use that code, and you're off. So I went to go return that. We walked up and got Mom a wheelchair again so we could wheel her around, and that actually made the whole getting to the gate process extremely fast. They really took care of us because Mom was not feeling well. And then when we got to the other side, I would say the only problem was that all the restaurants that were open were on the outside of the security gate. All the restaurants that were on the inside of the security gates were pretty much closed or closing down. And when I walked back over, because only one side of the international terminal at Haneda has food, we walked over, I pushed Mom to a table, and then I went to the only restaurant that I saw was open and waited in line. There was a long line coming around the corner, so I figured they were the only ones open. And I actually looked at around all the areas and saw that the noodle place I wanted to try was actually closed. They were only doing like their delivery of food, that the last orders that came in now. And the only restaurant that was open was kind of a bar. So the guy was actually serving drinks as well, and they didn't really have that great of food. So what I ended up doing was waiting there, and Lynn walked by, and I had her wait in line for me while I ran over to a convenience store to buy some sandwiches. So it was like, they're super inexpensive comparatively, because if I bought them at like a 7-Eleven or a Lawson's or a Family Mart, I feel they would have been a lot cheaper. It was about 700 yen for the 2 sandwiches, and they're only half a sandwich. They weren't like a whole sandwich. I bought 2 halves of a sandwich and brought those back to Mom and the table, and then went back to Lynn to see how much longer we had to wait. And it was 8:30 at the time, and the guy behind the cashier was just screaming, "Okay, we do not serve food after 9. The kitchen closes." So I'm like, okay, we got to get this going. And there was this huge delay of people trying to figure out what they wanted to eat, and I had no idea why they were taking so long. Like, go up there, use your credit card, charge it, and move on. And you'd figure that, like, the cashier would kind of be pushing that, like, do you have a credit card? Just move on. But people were like, can I pay with euros? Can I pay with this? Can I pay with that? And he's like, okay, no problem, but your change is going to be in yen. And so the people behind me were starting to get antsy because he kept screaming the kitchen was closing at 9. And the biggest problem that we had there was the fact that it was like 8:30 and then 8:40 and then 8:50, and I literally got to the cashier at like 8:59. So I don't know if the people behind me got food. I do know that I tried to help a couple people in front of me and a couple of people behind me order, because no one read Japanese. So it was just like this comedy of errors, if you could say. It was just no one knew how to speak. Like, they would pay in euros, and then you'd be like, change in yen, okay? And they'd be like, what do you mean change in yen? I only have euros. And it's like, no, as in the money you get back is going to be in yen. Or like, it's crazy because people aren't thinking outside of the box at the time, and they're just so focused on trying to get what they want, and they don't even know what they want, that they're just making all these like silly mistakes, in my opinion. And so when I got up there, it was like, I want the chicken tender set and the tonkatsu sandwich set, cup of coffee and a Coke. And he was like, okay, done. And I had my card out. I stuck the card into the chip reader. It was charged, and I was done. I was the fastest one there by far. The second guy behind me, he was like Chinese, and he was struggling so hard to order this exact same sandwich that I just ordered. And he was pointing to it, and like the cashier was, I guess he was just thinking that he was going to speak Japanese like I did, but the guy couldn't. And so instead of just waiting, I just spoke Japanese for him, and then like was like, how many? And he's like, I need 3 of them. I'm like, okay. And I just ordered the entire meal, and then he's like, thank you. I'm like, okay, it's all good. But that was the thing that was slowing everybody down, and people were like getting impatient because this is literally the only restaurant open in the entirety of the secured area of the international terminal. They really should rethink that whole idea of how they set up the food in the international terminal. I don't know if it's better at the domestic. I can't remember. I've only flown Haneda one other time to go to Hokkaido, actually, which was the domestic flight. I did fly through Haneda to go to Taiwan, but it was such a quick trip to Haneda, I didn't actually spend any time there. Whereas my flight to Hokkaido, I actually was waiting because I was early. So I remember walking around. I remember that's when when I experienced what Haneda was over there. So that was pretty cool. And I just think that they need to sort it to where all the restaurants that were open outside of the security, that's great. You could drive people in. But the problem is that most people want to get through security near their gate so that they don't have to worry. And I feel that most airports actually have it set up to where the majority of the restaurants that are open are past the security gate. Now, it being Japan, I do understand that they tend to close a little bit earlier. I think a lot of people have the wrong idea that, although Tokyo stays open and awake for a long time, most other places don't. I remember it being quite the surprise to a lot of my friends that Kobe closed around like 6 o'clock in the evening or afternoon, and it's like nothing's open. And so it gets really hard to find food. It gets, you really have to fend for yourself, or you're popping over to Osaka. And it's just one of those, like, you start to learn that. And as I said earlier, I was like gonna be bitten by that fact that I told Mom that we didn't have to grab any food in Shibuya, which we should have just done. We should have just, had one nice meal in Shibuya right before we went back. I just didn't know what to get in that area. I'm not too familiar with restaurants in the Shibuya area. Thinking about it now, it's like, that hindsight, we should have just gone to Koreatown and went and got some Korean food. That would have been kind of cool, because I'm pretty sure that Mom and Lynn don't know that part of, I believe it's Shibuya, it might be Shinjuku. Not that they're far from each other. And we all had our Suica cards so that we could easily tap in and out. I do feel that it'd be great to go back to Japan sometime soon again, maybe after Lynn's graduation trip, but the flight back was pretty uneventful. Going from Haneda to SFO really wasn't anything spectacular. I watched most of the Japanese movies on the plane arriving in, and then upon arriving in, I was sleeping. So I got about a good 5 hours worth of sleep, I want to say. The food was good. We were served breakfast, which was like these stuffed pancakes. That was super delicious. We got a snack of tuna fish rolls, and those were really good. Funny enough, we got dinged at SFO for that. A dog came up to Mom and was trying to jump on her leg, and she was in the wheelchair, and the police officer came by and was like, excuse me, ma'am, do you have any like meats on you or anything? And she pulled out the tuna roll that was in her purse, because she actually saved it rather than eating it, whereas Lynn and I both ate ours. And the guy was like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's a tuna fish roll. We got it off the plane on the trip here. Like, Mom just didn't eat hers, I guess. And the guy was like, oh, okay, whatever. And he just walked off, which was kind of funny. Like, they were really cool about it, gracious about it. And it's like, not that Japan wasn't when we got dinged there. The guy was really like chill about it. When he saw we had the fruit, I was like, it was a mistake. I'm sorry. You could throw the entire thing away. Plastic bin and all. They were just a lot more formal about it. We had to fill out paperwork and stuff like that in Japan. 2 trips from the airport later, and we were, we're home. Mom just had so much luggage that we had to go through. We got home, we unloaded our stuff out of the luggage. I then put Mom's stuff into certain suitcases and took everything, put it in Lynn's Honda Civic, and we drove heavy to mom's house in the East Bay to drop her off, and that really finished off the night. I then helped mom unpack some of the stuff because she had some frozen stuff that she needed to take out. Everything was heavy, like 50-ish pounds, and her back was still killing her. So we went and did everything necessary to get mom settled in. She took some pain meds, went to bed. I drove back home, spoke with Lynn a little bit about the trip, and took a shower and went to sleep. I was feeling pretty rank after realizing that, like, we left on Sunday night and it was now like Tuesday, and we didn't take a shower or brush our teeth since that Sunday night. So we were feeling pretty gnarly. I have to find it, but I think I might have left a battery bank on the plane, which sucks because it was brand new. I bought it for the trip. It was a smaller battery bank because I noticed certain places were being really strict with the size of battery bank that you're bringing on, and Singapore was one of those places. Like, as soon as my bag went through the scanner, they're like, "Oh, you have a battery bank," and they like pulled me aside to check the size of it. I bought a really small one. Like, it was only like a 5 or 7,000 milliamp battery bank, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, this is cool to go on," but that was the purpose. And they had big signs everywhere that said only certain sizes of battery banks could go through. I think the largest was 10,000, which that 7,000 was below, obviously, but I actually have like a 20,000 here that I didn't bring, and I'm glad I didn't bring because that would have had to have been thrown away or something, and it wasn't cheap. So different countries, different rules. But this will end my Thailand, Singapore, Japan escapades, and it was a great trip. I'm super happy to be home, but I'm glad that we did it at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here and say see you in the next video.